Well, I noticed last week that I need to waffle on for a little bit because it cuts off the beginning, and so I'm only really going to start talking properly once we get to 10 seconds. Right, here we go, folks. And now I'm going to zoom out on here.
Hi, everybody.
Yeah,
It's me, Joseph Ruskin.
I think just a little bit of a spoiler of what's going to come up ahead. This guy I thought was brilliant, and I think he would have made a great Nth Doctor. What do you reckon, Jeff?
Oh, sure. I mean, he potentially could be the Doctor, sure.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
no, my little joke was saying I'm Joseph Ruskin because you had, the camera on him since I'm not on camera. So I'm saying, that was my little attempt to our vast audience to say, he's representing me since Ben likes to have like representations visually even when somebody doesn't appear on camera,
Yeah.
even if they're not very accurate.
Yeah, but it was funny though.
So I'm inhabiting the body of Joseph Ruskin today.
Yeah.
But
Well.
no,
Yeah.
with these, it's like the focus is on the pictures anyway, not us. So I don't think it's that big a deal for me.
Yeah, it's fair enough though. But I like to see people on camera. Anyhow, see their reactions.
In the not too distant future, I will. It's just
excellent, very good.
There's certain physical conditions that prevent me from doing so.
Fair enough. Right. So,
but anyway, enough of that.
Right then, I will try to do the Rod Serling voice, and I will heed your advice of doing it more slowly. Mr. and Mrs. Arthur Castle, gentle and infinitely patient people whose lives have been a hope chest with a rusty lock and a lost set of keys. But in just a moment, that hope chest will be opened, and an improbable phantom will try to bedeck the drabness of these two people's failure-laden lives with gold and precious stones of fulfillment. Mr. and Mrs. Arthur Castle, standing on the outskirts and about to enter the Twilight Zone. I think that bit's a bit poorly written. Bedeck the drabness.
Well, I didn't understand what he said when I actually heard him say it.
I know, it's overwritten, and it's like the NFs wouldn't let him in their club with that writing.
Well, as we established last week, Rod Serling is definitely full of himself by now. So he's rather than just quoting random Shakespeare, he's trying to write his own.
I mean, it's just. But the thing is, though, the next one in the book, but unfortunately isn't until probably in about 20 episodes' time. The introduction is brilliant and full of about 3 or 4 good jokes. But yeah, as you know, you don't like any spoilers. But
how dare you read ahead, Ben?
No, it's just the way the book's laid out because it's in production order.
Just because something exists in a book doesn't mean you have to read it.
Yeah, well, I just saw it accidentally, and I knew because I'd seen that particular episode before.
I accidentally read all the jokes.
Yeah, but I'd already looked at it. I'd already read through all of that and watched the episode before. It's called Mr. Dingle the Strong, and it stars Burgess Meredith, who was in that one with the library, and that's an excellent one in about 20 episodes' time. So when it gets to the summer, folks have got that to look forward to.
Okay.
Right then. Do you want to read this one, Jeff?
Starting with what?
After taking pity.
Oh. Hang on, let me actually raise it up to my head to the point I can read that. My eyes are having trouble focusing. After taking pity on an old woman,
I could do it.
And giving her $1 for a seemingly worthless bottle she fished from the trash, impoverished
Wait a minute, I'll do it. Impoverished curio shop owner Arthur Castle is amazed to see emerge from his dapper. No, wait a minute. Amazed to see emerge from it a dapper genie in modern dress. I'm not sure how modern his dress was. It might have been slightly Edwardian, like the first Doctor. I'm not quite sure. I wasn't paying that much attention. And we'll have a look when we look at the slides. Because this guy gets details wrong. In modern dress, who informs him that he and his wife have been granted 4 wishes. Unbelievingly, Castle wishes for the cracked glass in a display case to be fixed. In an instant, it is done. The next wish is considerably grander, $1 million in cash. But after giving thousands away to folks in the neighborhood, he and his wife have a nasty shock. Income taxes take up all but 5 of what's left. I'll get onto the tax code later at that time. For his third wish, Castle comes up with what he thinks is foolproof. He wishes to be a ruler of a foreign country sometime in the 20th century, one who can't be voted out of office. Laughing, the genie willingly complies. All is exactly as Castle specified, but it is certainly not what he desired. The country is Germany, it is the end of World War II, and he is Adolf Hitler. Frantically, he uses the final wish to return to his old life. The genie is gone, the wish is expended, and Castle is back where he started, and yet somehow life doesn't seem so bad. When I saw that, this is all there is in terms of the review. That's it from the guy who wrote the book. A word to the wise now, to the garbage. Wait a minute. A word to the wise now. Wait a minute. A word to the wise. That's a weird sentence.
You need me to read that one, Ben?
Yeah, go on. I got. It's baffled me.
A word
that
to the wise now, to the garbage collectors of the world, to the curio seekers, to the antique buffs, to everyone who would try to coax out a miracle from unlikely places. Check the bottle you're taking back for a 2-cent deposit. The genie you save might be your own. Case in point, Mr. and Mrs. Arthur Castle, fresh from the briefest of trips into the Twilight Zone.
Now, Jeff, that could be a point of difference. Now, does he mean in an NF way, we are our own genies? Or does he mean that a genie might appear in someone's bottle?
I mean, I assumed he was talking about the genie might come out of the bottle.
Because an NF might say, we are all our own genies. We just have to learn to apply ourselves. All right. And that's it. The second episode to be produced, written by Serling, was a pretty pale affair. There were a couple of nice special effects shots. A broken glass display case heals itself, and the shards of a bottle reassemble into an unblemished whole. And Joseph Ruskin, in modern dress, makes a dapper and menacing genie. But overall, the episode isn't terribly interesting. Over to you.
Well, it was more interesting than the previous weeks. But it reminds me a lot of the one about the guy who was in the afterlife and was told he could have whatever he wanted, and then got bored after like a few weeks. And that this guy failed miserably in wishing, because it's like, I don't know, maybe it's easy for me in hindsight, just because I've seen so many things like about this, or the concept is so familiar to me, that it's easy for me to think, oh, I've imagined this scenario so many times that if it really did happen, I feel like I'm more prepared for it.
Yeah.
So it's hard for me to put myself into the mind of somebody who's like, the concept is new to them or whatever. But it seemed like even in, they don't specify exactly where this place is, but it sounds like it's supposed to be in the U.S. somewhere or whatever.
A state with a state income tax.
Yeah, so it seemed like he would have heard stories or read stories of genies before, though. So it wouldn't be just like something he'd never thought of before. But I guess maybe he's just one of those way too practical people who doesn't allow his imagination to spend any time thinking about such things.
And also, I'll just say, they run a business. They should know the tax code.
Yeah, really.
But here's the weird thing, though, and I'll just bring this up now. Peter Schiff talked about the tax code at this point, and he said that people did not pay 90 cents, 90% income tax. There were so many loopholes at the time. Nobody would have run a business to just pay 90%, 90 cents on the dollar. So,
well, anyway, yeah, and you could say the moral of this story was how bad the IRS is.
yeah.
But also how badly he was at making a wish. Because the first thing, okay, he says later in the episode, you can't wish for more wishes. First of all, at the point that he says, you know, you can wish for anything, you just go ahead and wish for more wishes. Because if it's truly what he says, then you would get them.
But Jeff, I've got 2 wishes that are foolproof. You wish for omnipotence and omniscience, and that's all you need. Because if you're all powerful, you can make anything happen.
Well, but I definitely wouldn't want that, though, because that's like you're burdened with everything in the whole universe, and so it's like,
yeah, but because you're all powerful, you can change those problems, make those problems go away.
Yeah, I guess, I don't know.
All powerful, you see.
That's a whole different thing. Like that goes back to what Amber and I talked about in my to hype one of my own videos in my Faith and Type series, the very first one. We talked about the concept of like eternal life and what's scary about that. So when I think about that, my instant feeling is not one of power, but of fear. Of the concept of being an those O words you said, being, is not one that sounds appealing to me. But my thought was, they brought that up. I think it was in Aladdin. I'm pretty sure the villain in Aladdin, at least one of the versions, tells him that the genie was lying to him when he said they couldn't wish for more wishes, that he was just doing that so that he could get out of his obligation, because he wanted him to use one of his wishes to free the genie. So he was saying he wasn't honest with him. And so
I thought this bit,
my thought is that, you know, you go ahead and wish for the more wishes, and the worst thing that can happen is he tells you can't do that.
Right.
Because if he really can't do it, then he won't. But if he can, then he will. So. But so then, the second thing, the second question is there a time limit? Because everybody always acts like, oh, I've got to decide this right now. And Genie even tells him to think long about it. So I would be like, is there an actual deadline to this? Are you saying that as I can take as long as I want to make my wish?
Yeah, but I think these genies, you know, they pick their victims. They don't pick people who are strategic and have seen a. Now, did you think that line was funny when that happened? And do you reckon that some people might have thought it was in bad taste?
Which line?
This one. I'm Hitler. I'm in a bunker.
Well, I thought it was a little bit clumsy because it was like he suddenly became the narrator. Like you wouldn't be able to figure out who he was and where he was if he didn't say it.
Yeah, I know. I mean, but it was just the way, like, and he looking straight into the camera almost. I'm Hitler. Yeah. I'm in a bunker.
Right. If I didn't know what this was, I just saw this picture, I would think it was from a comedy.
Yeah, and that's what it seemed like to me. And at that point, that's when I felt, is this bad taste? Because at this point, this is not that long after World War II.
Yeah, that's one of those things where it's hard for me to interpret, you know, because I can't put myself in the time frame of that. But honestly, I can think of more recent things and think I've never been one who thinks it's in poor taste just to reference something. And there's people that still believe that. Like they in terms of they still think references to Hitler or Nazis or whatever. I could be wrong, so somebody can correct me if this is not the case. But I think I'm pretty sure that at least one citizen of Deutschland, uh, I've heard, I've heard or read them say that it's actually illegal in Germany to um, to in any way sound like you're promoting Hitler or Nazis or something. I don't know. I can't remember what it
Yeah,
was
you're not.
exactly, but
You can't put a swastika on a book or even
yeah,
have
like
it on.
there's
Yeah.
some really strict rules about expressing things about that. So they're obviously, if those things are indeed still enforced, then they're obviously still very sensitive about that. Sensitive is not even the right word, but yeah, there's people that think any reference to that, even in jest, like that it can't be funny. That there's people I've heard, Jewish people, for instance, say that there literally is no way for Hitler to be funny, like no matter what way you portrayed it, that it's not, it can't ever be comedy. Obviously, I disagree with that, uh, and I've never, by comparison, the more recent things that we've had. Um, in terms of people that have slaughtered a lot of people. And they may not necessarily have the numbers that Hitler did in total, but they certainly have been willing to kill whoever got in their way in my lifetime. Um, there's nobody that I feel like that about where there can't be something comedic about it. It doesn't mean that everything about it I'm going to necessarily think is funny, because somebody like South Park, spent a lot of time sort of it seems like their goal was more to offend people than to actually make things funny.
Yeah.
uh, it's more, to me, if your goal is to be funny and you offend in the process, that's different than your goal is to offend and hope that maybe it's funny. And it seems like too often with South Park that it was just, oh, let's see how offensive we can be so we get attention to ourselves, and then try to make it funny within that. And so more of the time than not, their stuff wasn't really that funny.
Yeah.
Um, anyway, of course, Twilight Zone isn't a comedy, although it can have comedic moments. This one, I really think I can't really dispute him saying that it wasn't particularly interesting, in the sense that the concept isn't new, and they didn't take it in a lot of directions that were super innovative or anything. But it's entertaining for what it was, and certainly I think overall more entertaining than the season premiere.
Yeah.
Um, I wouldn't say that. Um, uh, I wouldn't say that that this would have been a fantastic opener to the season either. But it probably would have been slightly better than the previous one, because it's at least, to me, it seemed like it went by faster. The first
Yeah.
one kind of dragged a bit, and there was more just sort of shouting into the distance kind of thing.
It,
Whereas this
it,
one, it pretty much, the pacing, it stays, something's happening all the time.
I would only think the first scene was a little slow to get going, like before the genie appeared.
Yeah,
It could have taken a minute out. Because I watched this in the highest possible definition, and it makes a difference when you're watching good acting. In like this guy was good, like these little expressions that he gave, like good subtle acting, and from the guy playing Ruskin Joseph, or Joseph Ruskin, he was, and that benefits when you're watching someone who's a good actor in that definition. You see the little things, more of the little things they do, and even that old woman was okay. Like
J-
in
yeah. As you bring up her, my thought was that, just like with last week's episode, I think I did think of a way, to me, that could make it slightly more interesting, or more of a kind of fun twist at the end, without changing anything, without spending a dime more on the budget. in that scene, the special effect where they have the bottle, like, in the trash can, like, reform itself or whatever.
Yep.
You could have one of two ways you could go with it. One would be slightly more, I don't know what the word is, intriguing than the other. One would be to have a different person pick it up out of the trash, like a different old lady or something like that. And the other
Yeah.
would be the original old lady who would pick it up and you have like a smile on her face as she walked off, like she knew all along.
Yeah.
Because that would be kind of closer to the one about the sales guy. The one that slipped with his shoes on the street or
Yeah.
whatever.
I love that one.
Yeah, I knew you did. So, but it would be a little more similar to that if they had a scene like that where the woman, picked up so it was like she knew it when she went in there. And they've had several episodes like that where there was somebody that was
Yeah. I mean, that was
less
like,
innocent than they appeared.
I mean, that was the kind of thing, that episode, What You Want, was like this, but to the next level, or a couple levels above this, where it's
Yeah,
like,
and that's okay. There's a recurring theme 2 episodes into the season, where we've seen 2 episodes with kind of feels to them that remind us of better episodes from the first season.
yeah,
So it's kind of like, the feeling is, are they just sort of mailing it in at this point? Is it sort of like, well, here's another one of these, so like it, So hopefully that's not the case, and that I'll be more impressed by episodes from this season, and that they're just kind of getting off to a slow start.
yeah. I mean, yeah, I mentioned the tax code before. There were lots of deductions. I don't know what else to say about this.
Well, wait, because you go back to your
Yeah, the board. Yep.
yeah, because you can't see the bottom of it.
No, sorry. There you go.
Okay, one up my sleeve. What does that mean?
Well, just keep one the third wish up my sleeve. Don't play it. Keep it in reserve.
Okay, so that goes to what I said about the time limit thing. Like, because they acted like there was some sort of hurry for the wishes. But okay, even staying within the context of Mr. Castle, and I couldn't understand his name when anybody said it in the show until I saw it in writing. I was like, Cassim, what are they saying? But anyway, just keeping it in his life, and we've established that his financial situation is not good. He's threatened with bankruptcy or whatever. No prospects for. So instead of the O words,
Yeah.
try to do your best to inhabit his character. And what would be a better wish than just $1 million?
Financial security. I suppose is if it's
Yeah,
him.
that's probably more in the right direction. Because even though, yeah, there's sinister directions that things can take, but you still sort of, as you say, you foolproof it a little better, even that, without having to even wish for omnipotence or anything like that. You could say something like, I wish that anytime I needed money for anything, it would be available to me.
Yeah, that's a good one.
So that there you put yourself in a situation where, yeah, there could still be some, it could be. Then at first, I thought the direction they were going with when the IRS guy showed up is, I thought when he said Internal Revenue, I thought he was going to be like FBI or something when he gave him the card, because I thought it was going to be like investigating. Okay, well, how did this guy get $1 million all of a sudden? Where did it come from? And they don't even mention that. Even the IRS guy isn't like, well, it's going to be an audit where we find out where you got your money from. It's just, oh, we're just going to tax you.
Yes. Money laundering laws.
Yeah, because the
Yes,
first two things I'm thinking of are the guy's a cop of some sort, like FBI or something. That's like, hey, how did this guy suddenly get $1 million? Where did it come from? Or two, even when he said he was IRS, that it would be like, yeah, we're here for the audit to find out, for you to prove where your income came from.
Yeah. So if you were doing it these days, you'd have to think, damn, I got to think about the anti-money laundering laws that are built into the Patriot Act.
Well, yeah, I
And
mean, there's a lot of things like
yeah,
that. It's like, okay, all of a sudden, the scene where where they're just holding money and giving it out to people. First, that in itself, it's like, how did these specific people? Did they call those specific people while they were still picking up the money up off the floor? Because if it was just a free for all where they're like, hey, we got $1 million, then, I don't know. I guess it depends on what neighborhood they were in, but I'm thinking there might have been a few people that weren't necessarily on their list of people to invite that would have been running in there grabbing money from them.
Yeah, I know. That was a bit weird, like just keeping it on the floor. And they could have established some of those relationships within that first scene that sort of dragged out for an extra minute or so, and maybe it could have been something which came in later on. Like, remember the one with the old fella who, in order to save the girl, won for the angels, and he sort of gave his own life up so that she could live. Maybe bring something in like that, or there's other ways it can be.
Yeah, there's an episode where, when we get to it, I will know, but I may not even know right from the get go. It may take a little bit for me to recognize it because it's been so long since I've seen it. But there's a Twilight Zone episode where, I won't spoil the whole thing, obviously, but the concept is similar in that there's basically wishes granted, but he directly spells out the consequence that it actually results in the death of someone that you don't know.
Yeah.
And so anytime you choose to use this, you get what you want, but you realize that you're killing someone.
Yeah.
Someone. Yeah. So anyway, that one had to me more intrigue because there's more of a direct thing of, even if the initial wish comes true or the thing that you get doesn't have some sort of instant sinister consequence for you, we're telling you up front it does for somebody else.
I mean, this whole story device about the wishes and it not going right, it goes right back to Greek tragedy and the thing with the oracle and prophecy, and you get what you want, but you don't get it in the way that you like it, and it's like, and the oracle of Delphi thing where it's cryptic and it's different in hindsight from what you thought, and that aspect to it, but it's able to do that in a convincing way. I mean, $1 million did go further in those days, but again, the tax code thing.
Yeah.
$1 trillion.
Yeah, well, that's the guy. I was thinking that there's been at least one where somebody wished for all the money in the world, and that was taken quite literally, and so everybody's money suddenly disappeared and went to that person, and he reaped the consequences of that occurring. It was just like worldwide economic collapse. But I don't like the change of Rod Serling being on camera, because I think he fancied himself looking smooth, but to me, he just looks goofy.
He actually wrote, I'm going to give you some stuff now. What he actually said was that he had a big difference from people in live to what he said. He shot well on camera, but he wasn't good looking in real life, and that he was about 5'4", 5'6", and women had a different reaction to him in life than when he was on camera. So he comes across as a little bit differently in the interviews than you might think.
Well, I'm just saying on camera, it just, to me, it kind of takes away from it. There was a certain sort of mysteriousness that that when you just heard his voice, but when he appears on camera, it almost takes away from that. It's sort of like, instead of sort of hearing this voice that sounds cool talking about it, then you're like, here's this goofy guy.
Yeah.
So it
And
seems
also,
more comedic and
yeah, I
less
think
mysterious.
also I think you've got used to seeing it on like the Simpsons or something, like the animated version of him walking in front of the camera and talking. Did that happen on The Simpsons?
I can't think of an episode off the top of my head that he did that in, but I know it's been parodied in plenty of other things.
Yeah, it takes you out a bit. I mean, I don't mind it happening at the end, like in the final episode of the first season, but it can take you out a little bit at the beginning.
I would say they should have reserved it for certain special occasions. Yeah, not as an every week thing. So that's my first impressions of season 2 are not that it's a parody of itself, but that it's sort of moved in that direction a bit. That it's sort of like, we established a certain coolness, and we've taken away a little bit of that with some of the things we're doing now. So hopefully, like I said, I'm still with an open mind, as I always am. Even in the last few episodes of Blake 7, I was still hoping for some amazing conclusion.
Yeah, but the last episode, I think you quite like. I think you quite like that.
It was certainly a lot better than the second to last episode, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But anyway, but yeah, I'm holding out hope that they'll kind of iron out the kinks here of season 2 and start to get back to some higher quality material. But like I said, this was entertaining. I didn't sit there thinking this was bad or anything, and the performances were good. So that's one thing we've seen is pretty consistent good acting on the show. So that part has stayed the same. We've just started season 2 off without any anything that just blows you away as being this is a cool thing.
Right, so I've got some comments here from Retro Gamer. So what do you mean about it being cryptic, esoteric? What was that bit about? Oh yeah, you were saying that when it's just the voice, you get an extra feeling of it being mysterious, but then when you see him on screen, maybe you sort of take less note of what he's saying, and it's like, oh, it's that guy on screen, and you don't hear it as well. Maybe not as good a setup. I don't know. What do you mean by that, Retro Gamer? And then we got here, and then he's got, no, I don't believe Hitler had ENFP preferences. We did a video with Jonathan on that. Jonathan made the case for ENFJ preferences for Hitler.
Yeah, I've most often heard either ENFJ or INFJ. The EI thing is always the hardest to determine in my view, because I think I've heard people say, well, he couldn't have been an introvert, or he wouldn't have been able to make all those speeches in front of people, or get have that charisma with the crowd. And I'm like, I don't really buy that aspect of it, because it kind of depends on whether or not doing that was charging him or draining him.
Yeah.
Because a lot of things I've read about Hitler made it seem like he was pretty insecure.
Yes.
And really didn't enjoy people that much, so he could have been an introvert.
Yeah. Also, because Jonathan's read about 12 books on Hitler, because he did a history degree. He's not a secret Nazi, unless it's a very good one. But
he's secretly indoctrinating the world into Nazism through Enneagram.
No, he doesn't like Hitler. But he was saying that Hitler said that he always had to be around people, and and he was counterphobic 6, and it talked about because he was a runner in the trenches in World War I, and people would say that other officers wrote reports about him, saying that he had a lot of fear in him, and so he had a lot of fear in him, but he took that danger on. So counterphobic 6, and Jonathan made a big case with quotes and things that Hitler being counterphobic 6. being filled with fear, taking on his fears. I'm just going to try and find the video and put it in the description.
That's okay. Anyway, we can not have this be the let's type Hitler thing over again.
Yeah, because I'm going to find the video on that.
Because that's a whole different kettle of fish, or whatever you want to say. Then was not the focus of this Twilight Zone episode. It was more of a, I'm guessing, just more of a, they thought to themselves, what would be the most kind of striking way we can drive home this idea of be careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
And that would be to have the guy say, I want to be a foreign leader. And he even said this century. I mean,
no.
He set himself up so badly. If he had said, I want myself, as myself to be this leader, not to inhabit someone else's body. So many ways he could have covered his himself, protected himself from such a thing that he just set himself up completely for. Which is why, of course, the genie has such a good hearty laugh.
Yeah, class actor. I'd like to see that actor in other things. Joseph Ruskin. Yeah. Yeah, and he had that voice, American theatre standard voice. No.
You really love saying that.
Yes, because to me because it's like the American equivalent of the British actors in Doctor Who. And
well, it seems like basically people who actually enunciate. So I'd be curious to know if you just heard me in something, if you would call my voice American. Do you understand it?
It's weird because what they did was
because I do most of the time. I'm not saying I never mumble, because I'm sure I do, but and contrary to some people's point of view where they say I don't have an accent, I actually do. If you listen, you can hear my accent. But anyway, but I do try to enunciate my words, which seems to be the difference that, and maybe that's just as my point of view as an American, but seeing the British stuff, it's like the people who speak clearly get called whatever you said.
It's rather.
The royal whatever.
So what it is so it's the way they were trained. A lot of it was the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts, and a lot of it where people were classically trained, they would do Shakespeare, and because Shakespeare was so verbal and people had to hear right at the back, it really was about really speaking clearly. And somebody like Patrick Stewart, he spoke in a Yorkshire dialect and he had his accent beaten out of him metaphorically, so that he cannot actually go back to his original voice. And now Ian McKellen has slightly gone back to his voice, where you can hear his Lancashire accent. And so that very, as you said, very much enunciated. Tom Baker had that as well. It's the rather kind of accent, theatrical Shakespeare accent that is credible when performing Shakespeare. Now, in the United States, they wanted an equivalent where, and I think it was because they didn't want to try and do a British accent and not do it quite right, but they wanted something that would sound credible if you're doing something set in another country, set in another time. So if you think of the American actors in those biblical films with Charlton Heston,
I don't even have to think of that. I can just think of William Daniels as Kit.
Yes, that kind of, and so
or one later of the things. They made fun of that with later when he was on Boy Meets World and played Mr. Feeney, because the older brother has this episode where he's like imagining him with him, so he's like hallucinating him there when he needs advice or whatever. And so one of the times he's there sitting on the chair and he says something. He says, "You don't see him, the British guy on the chair?" And Mr. Feeney says, "I'm from Boston, you boob." All of a sudden, your sound went out. So I don't know whether you can be heard on the recording or not, but I can't hear you. So. Well, I don't know. Assuming that this recording continues while he does that, I can use this time to inform you of all my wonderful thoughts on anti-disestablishmentarianism. I'm just kidding about that. I don't even actually know what that means. I've just heard it because it's a long word. And oh, and as I was saying,
yeah,
you'll love it if you when you play back the recording.
Okay.
What I said in your absence, but anyway,
yeah, the Mid-Atlantic accent, and I think they tried to make American Theatre Standard actually sound like that thing you said as you said, I'm from Boston, you boob. They actually tried to make it sound like a New England accent in the American Theatre Standard.
Well, in some cases, they really just were New England actors, you know.
Yeah.
That's what they sounded like. And why I've actually come to the defense of the actress who played Perry on Doctor Who, because she's had her accent attacked by people, you know, because Perry was supposed to be an American character. And is it Nicola Bryant? Is that what she says her name?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, Nicola Bryant is English. But the thing is from the very beginning of that character, they established that she, if I remember right, I think she was from a military family or something, and she had traveled all over the place. So it really isn't that unusual for somebody who has lived in a bunch of different places to have an accent that's kind of all over the place. So if you pay attention, if you're just looking at it as, oh, she's supposed to be American and she says things in a weird way, you know, you could call it a bad American accent. But I choose to give them the benefit of the doubt and say that it was just the character who was cosmopolitan, as they say, you know.
Yeah.
So the only times that I think that it stood out were not her fault. They were the writer's fault, because they gave her a dialogue, like a phrase of dialogue, to say that was more of an English phrase.
Yeah.
That American wouldn't say.
Yeah, she said that in the book. I got the Doctor's Handbook series, and one of them had an interview with Nicola Bryant, and she was talking about that, about British writers putting things in that an American wouldn't say.
Yeah. So that's the only time that I thought it, you know, because I didn't even think about it at the time. Like when I first saw her on Doctor Who, I don't recall thinking, oh, she's supposed to be an American. Like I didn't make a distinction, you know, because the Doctor, of course, wasn't from England. He was from another planet.
Yeah.
He just happened to speak with an English accent. Which that was one of the things that I actually enjoyed about when the new series came, even though I didn't like Christopher Eccleston's accent and he was hard to understand. But the writers gave him a line, or the dialogue exchange, where Rose asks him, if you're from another planet, how come you sound like you're from the north? And he said, lots of planets have a north.
Yeah, but they don't sound like that in the United States, though. So that line didn't make sense.
Well, no, but the point I'm making is that they made fun of that concept of the idea that probably because there were some fans who said, well, you can't have a guy who sounds like this be the Doctor. He has to sound like the royal dramatic whatever, kind of voice, which I would have preferred, just because I could have understood the words better.
Yeah, that's the thing.
But it was still funny, to make fun of the fact that, well, you can't expect him to sound like that just because that's what he sounded like in previous actors or whatever. You know?
You've heard William F. Buckley, haven't you? I don't, and I've heard
Yes.
William F. and Gore Vidal. I don't, not really heard these other ones. Boston. Yeah. So who said that? Who said I'm from Boston, you boob? Who said that?
Mr. Feeney, played by William Daniels, the same guy who played the voice of Kit on Knight Rider. Yeah. And he was just speaking in his normal voice. I think pretty much on the parts I've seen him play, he doesn't really change his voice much. And so, yeah, they were making fun of the fact that people had called him British.
Right. I'm just going through these people here.
Well, then, if you search William Daniels, you can find out where he's actually from.
Right then, we'll have a look then.
Cinema. I don't remember, but I think it's somewhere in New England.
Right, William Daniels. But let's have a look here. So yeah, Catherine Hepburn, Betty Davis, Vincent. Right. Okay. As you said, yeah, Cary Grant had that weird accent. I don't talk like that. He had a weird voice. Contemporary use. William Daniels. I remember. David I. Pearce. Yes. Kelsey Grammer.
Right. Yeah, David Ogden Stiers. That was another one that some people said he was British. Yeah, that's the funny part is you have these Americans who get accused of being British, and then you have actual people from Britain who change their voice to sound American.
Yeah.
Like Hugh Laurie and John Mahoney.
Yep.
Among others.
Right, Peter. Is he called William Daniels?
Yes.
Right, I'm going to go up there and do the search now. William Daniels. Oh. Oh, I made a mistake. William. Is it called William Daniels?
Yeah.
No, it might help if I spell it right.
There you go.
Oh,
the one.
Me. Yeah. There he is, I think.
Yep.
Right, let's see where he was born. Brooklyn.
Yeah, so he's not even from Boston, he's from Brooklyn.
Yeah, but you see, the thing is, though, when he was born, he would have learnt that. It's like Patrick Stewart. He would have learnt the accent as the theatrical accent.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what happened.
Yeah, it says he was born in Brooklyn. Doesn't necessarily mean he lived there a long time. He could have grown up somewhere else.
Well, let's have a look. Early life.
Yeah, so it says he grew up in New York, but then it says he speaks especially in performances with a Boston Brahmin accent. So there's another name for...
I got somebody else. Did you ever watch Babylon 5? Peter Jurasik, in real life, talks with a sort of a New York, New Jersey accent, and then on Babylon 5 was able to do a good American theater standard accent to sound like an alien.
Well, we've spent a lot of time on the accents, I think. So.
Okay.
Was there anything else you had to say about the Twilight Zone episode?
The thing that made it was the performances, I suppose. I thought the first scene was a little slow. I give it about 7 out of 10.
I think there was untapped potential with the concept.
Yes.
But the acting, like you said, was good. The pacing was good. It entertained me. So I'm kind of going back and forth between 6 and 7, but I feel like I don't want to be too harsh on it, but I feel like we've seen that they can do better.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go ahead and give it a 6 out of 10.
Okay.
And say that one little thing could have brought it up to a 7. If they'd done, like I said, with having the old lady at the end or something, just a little bit. It's right on the precipice of a 7, but not quite.
Yeah, I mean, she could have like gone in and given him $1,000 and said, "Well, you were kind to me."
Yeah.
Right then. So,
All right. So, I wasn't thinking ahead. Like.
you want to know the
pull up the episode. So I was about to say.
So the next one should be Nervous Man in a $4 Room, and it's actually the
time for Nervous Man in a $4 Room.
And I'll apologise to the audience and to Jeff for talking over him a bit too much in this episode. Sorry about that.
I forgive you.
Thank you. All right, end broadcast.
Bye.
Bye.